Welcome to the tutorial for the Maplehurst dress. We're going to start by doing the darts. So here's my front pattern piece. I've marked on my particular dart and all my notches in a coloured pen, so it makes it easy to see which one's which. I'm just going to mark the point there, the apex of the bust, or the apex of the dart, with a pin pushed through. You can see this is cut right side up because it's asymmetric. Gently pull the pattern away. There you go, you can see the pins sticking up there. Just going to transfer that onto the wrong side of my top. So there we go, that's the point of the darts marked. Now you can use chalk to draw your lines from, well, I've marked here, look, I'll show you. I've done little snips where the notches are for the end of the dart. You can always use your chalk to mark from those little points there down to where you've popped your pin and pin through. I am just folding mine in half, pinning, pop that pin in there just to hold it flat, and I'm going to stitch from the broad end to the point. So here we go. Back tack to start, starting at the broad end, and I'm tapering off until my machine needle comes right off where that pin was. A couple of extra stitches, and then there you go, you can see it tapers off really nicely. So next job, check it looks all right on the right side, is to press that excess fabric downwards. There we go, all pressed beautifully. Repeat for the other dart. So I've done a little stay stitch on my neckline that I'm going to show you, but also I've done the other dart, so you can see both darts are done. And there's my little stay stitch, just because it's quite a broad neckline so it doesn't stretch. So now I'm going to do the centre back seam on the bodice. Here's my left hand side, right hand side, and again my fabric was right side up. I've marked my notches in a coloured pen so that I know which one is relevant to me and the size that I'm making. Let's unpin these, and I'm going to overlock the back seam first before I sew it. There we go, there's one side and the other side, right sides together. Start from the neckline, working down to towards the waist. There we go, centimetre seam allowance as usual. I'm just going to press this open now. This seam gives you an option for some lovely shaping at the back. There we go. So next we're going to do the shoulder seams. There's my front and my back. So as you can see, I've overlocked these ahead of sewing the seam. I'm going to pin those into place. I just find it easier when it's a smaller seam allowance to finish the edges first. So let's stitch these across. There we go, centimetre seam allowance as usual. And I'm just going to open these up and give them a little press. There we go, lovely. So there we go, bodice joined at the shoulders. So next we're going to prep the facing. This is the neck facing. So I've got two pieces here, both cut to the fold, a back and a front. The front is more scooped. And I've popped a little bit of interfacing on here. It's really, really light, just literally to stop it stretching rather than to add anything to the fabric. And I've marked the centre front and the centre back there. That will be useful when we're attaching. So I'm just going to pop a pin in here. And these are the shoulder seams. Centimetre across both. There we go. So we just need to press those open now. beautiful. And I'm going to overlock around the outside edge. There we go. If you're using a really light fabric, you could just fold that in and top stitch it. So now I'm going to attach this facing. There's my facing, and you can see the deeper curve is the front. So I'm going to match those first, and I've got my centre front notch there and my centre front notch there. Let's start by pinning those together. Then I'm going to go for the shoulder seams, so matching the seam lines, pop a pin in. Oh, a very blunt pin. If anybody knows where to get long, extra fine steel pins that either don't bend or that are lovely and sharp, please let me know in the comments. And now I'm going to go for the centre back notch and the centre back seam. Match those up. Pop a couple of extra pins in. Stitching 1 centimetre from the edge, starting at a shoulder seam. Here we go. So there we are, that's stitched on. Let's take these pins out. Next I'm going to clip into the curves about 1 centimetre or so apart. There we go, and then I'm going to trim down the facing. Oops, trim both down there, just the facing. I'm going to trim this round all the way round, and like I say, snipping into where the curved bits are. Trim that away. When you've done it all the way around, then you're going to fold this seam allowance. There we go. Right, so the seam allowance goes towards the facing. So you can tell which is the facing because it's got a little bit of interfacing on. You can give it a press if you want before you stitch, and then you just stitch right on the edge. Let me show you a bit closer. So just stitching really close to where that seam is. Here we go. So I'm pulling that seam allowance across underneath so that it's lying flat against my facing. You can see that's my facing because it's got the overlocking on the edge. I'm just really stitching the seam allowance to the facing. You want to do that carefully all the way around until it looks like this. There we go, there's my stitching. You can see my seam allowance is attached to my facing. Oh, a little seam that got away. Let's give that a little trim. And then you want to sort of fold it in. In fact, I could just turn it inside out and then that might, you'll see it more easily. There we go. And I'm just going to give that a press. There we go. Nice and flat. And the next step I like to do, you could stitch all the way around it and do some top stitching or something, but I like to stitch in the ditch there. So both shoulders, where the seam line is, I'm going to stitch right in between there, just to hold that facing down. And you can do the centre back as well, that will just help a little bit too. There you go, stitched in the ditch, job done. So now we're going to attach the front skirt. The front and the back skirt are the same piece. You'll see that you have to join the two sides together. There's my notches marked in pen, and there's my centre join where I've joined the two pieces together, and you've got a notch at the top there. That'll be your centre front. So let's unpin. There's my notch. This is my front, so I need to find the front of my bodice. I know this is the front because it's got the darts. Let's just double check. Yes, that you can see the lines, the slash line goes the same way. So you've got the right half. Now match that centre notch. Pop those together, pop a pin in it. Now you need to be super careful when you're pinning and stitching this seam because it's on the cross, it's on the bias, it's not on the straight grain, so it will stretch. So ever so gently, you want a little centimetre overlap there so that your join is perfect. Again, just let the pieces lie together. Don't pull them, don't stretch them. And again, you need a little centimetre overlap there too, so that you get a nice straight seam line. Now, centimetre seam allowance as usual, starting from one end all the way across to the other. And when you're stitching it, don't pull it through the machine, don't push it through the machine, just let the machine feed it through in its own time. There you go, perfect seam. I'm going to overlock the edge now. There we go, nice and neat. Let's look at it from the front, make sure it's perfect. Yeah, that's great. I'm going to push that seam allowance down and give it a press. There we go. So next it's the side seams. Here we go. We've done our front skirt and our back skirt. And this is a side seam here. So let's, oh, you can see I've overlocked it again before I've done it. Do mark your notches if you need to with chalk or a pen. I'm going to start by matching this seam line here because we want that to match as best we can. So laying them together and then putting a pin in as close to the stitch line as I can. That looks pretty good. Let's see. Okay, so we've got notches to find. I'm going to show you. I can see mine through my overlocking because I don't cut anything off when I overlock. But you will probably need to mark with a chalk or a pen or something, some tailor's tacks, just to be sure. So matching those notches and popping pins in before I then fill in the spaces in between so that I know where the fabric needs to be eased and where it doesn't. There we go. So we're going to start from under the arm, centimetre seam allowance to the hem. There we go. All the pins are out, so we're going to open up the seam, give it a press. Lovely. Now dare we check whether that seam matches. Let's have a quick peep. How did we do? Oh, that's not bad. Let's have a really close look. Oh, it's like a millimetre out, if that. That's pretty good. I'm happy with that. Next up is the sleeves prep. So I just wanted to talk to you about these facings as well, because you can make the dress with sleeveless. So it's got facings here, back armhole, front armhole. You'll find a set in your corresponding size. So it goes together just like the neck facing. That's the underarm, that's the shoulder. Stitch a centimetre, open them up, overlock around the outside, and then you can apply them to the armhole the same way as you did with your neckline facing. But all the instructions for that are in your booklet. But today we are going to do the sleeves. I've marked my notches in coloured pen again, and I've actually put little snips here, look, for the zigzag bit at the bottom, so I know where the folds go. Let's take all the pins out. Right, let's just work with one sleeve. So right side down, I'm going to fold up a centimetre first, and then I'm going to fold up 2 centimetres, and then I'm going to press it So I'll take that away and press it so that you can see a bit more clearly. There we go. So I've pressed up 1 centimetre, then I pressed it up another 2 centimetres. And I will be stitching on that edge to hem it soon. But first of all, I want to zigzag or overlock the edges so that when I stitch them together, they're nice and finished. So there we go. Don't worry, you don't have to overlock or zigzag around the ziggy-zaggy bit at the bottom. Just make sure you go down that first straight bit at the very least. The rest will be enclosed in that hem. So underarm seams from the underarm down towards the hem, centimetre seam allowance, and you do need to follow your zigzags here. So keep going as far as you can, then needle down and pivot. Then a few stitches, needle down and then pivot again. A few more stitches, needle down and last pivot. Try and get that as accurately as you can because that gives it a really nice shape and it makes it lie beautifully. There we go with our little ziggy-zag bit at the bottom. Press the seam open next. There we go. And now we're going to refold where we pressed initially. Might need to just encourage it a little bit over that seam. There we go. And then it's all pre-hemmed in a way, and then you just need to stitch it down. Right on the edge I'm going to do mine. Right there. I'm stitching from the inside of my sleeve. Just stitching on the edge all the way around the hem. Do pin or tack if you need to. There we go, all stitched, one sleeve. So now we've made the sleeves up, we're going to insert them into the armholes. Here's one of my sleeves. Now I've got my double notch there, so that's the back of my sleeve. So that goes in this side. So I'm going to, before I do anything else, match those double notches and put a pin in. Then I can't put it in the wrong way round. That's it. And then I'm going to pass it through my armhole and work from the inside. First matching that underarm seam. And then working around to the sleeve head where you've got a notch, and that matches the seam there. So shoulder seam to sleeve head notch, and then you've got a single notch which matches to your dart. So pop those together, and as you pin you need to make sure this bit of dart matches the curve of the armhole, otherwise it will pull and not look very good across your bust. So make sure when you're stitching that that lays flush. Now we're going to pin the sleeve head. If you have any problems with sleeve heads, you can always pop a little stitch in just across there, 1 centimetre in, and just give it a tiny little pull so that, you know, it doesn't gather, but it just will curve a little bit. It sometimes helps if you struggle to ease. So I'm just popping a few pins in now just to even out the ease across the top of the shoulder. So I'm going to start under the arm, centimetre seam allowance all the way around as I go, being super careful to ease that excess in across the sleeve head. Here we go. There you go. As you can see, I'm easing that in as I go. Taking my time so you don't get any puckers or ruckles in there. There we are. Looks fine to me. Let's give that an overlock. Finish that raw edge off. Great, instantly looks much neater. And let's just check on the outside that we haven't got any puckers or tucks. No, that looks great. So we've arrived at the hem. Both my sleeves are in. So we're going to work our way down to the hem. You can see I've overlocked mine in readiness. You can turn and turn, or as I'm going to do, I'm just going to turn and stitch, as this is a medium weight fabric. There we go. And I'm going to give that a press. And we're done. It's all pressed and ready to go. So we have done facing for the neck, 2 sleeves, 2 darts there, waist seam, and the hem. And hopefully yours looks very much like this. Enjoy.